Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Please subscribe to our videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. This is a review of the 2014 Tudor style. This collection has a bunch of different models. These are two of them. I think the collection goes down as low as like 28 millimeters wide for women. What you have here is the 38 millimeter wide version of the style and the 41 millimeter wide version of the style. Note that there's a few different dial colors. The watch also comes on bracelets, steel bracelets as well as two-tone steel and gold bracelets. So there's just a lot of variation here. And the Tudor style is essentially not only Tudor's basic dress watch, but also I think they're like most affordable collection. So this is basically the entry-level Tudor watch as of right now. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure with the sort of opening price of about $2,000, this is about as cheap as it gets. And the Tudor and the Tudor style range goes from about $2,000 to I want to say $3,500. But we'll talk more about that in a few moments. So Tudor, as you probably know, is owned by Rolex, so it's kind of like their baby watch brand. And the real difference between Tudor and Rolex is the movements. So Tudor is going to use Swiss ETA movements, while Rolex is going to use their own in-house made movements. So that's a major difference. And again, of course, Tudor has distinct designs, which aren't necessarily mimicked by Rolex. It used to be that there was sort of a baby version Tudor to every Rolex. Like there was basically the Rolex Submariner and there was a Tudor sub, but it's not really that way anymore. As of a couple of years ago, Tudor sort of gone out on their own to do their own thing. And we've reviewed Tudor watches before, and we generally have a high level of esteem for them. I'd say the best part of Tudor watches, this is a little sticker on there that comes essentially when you buy them, so that because this is a new one, but that's not always there. The best thing about these is the quality of the components, because other than the movements, the components are made basically alongside where Rolex watches are made. So for the money, I don't think you can get a better case. These steel cases are machined very, very well, very nice corners, sometimes even sharp corners, but you can tell that there's a fine level of manufacturing going on when it comes to the cases that you don't tend to find in other watches at this price level. And that's a competitive edge that Tudor has that a lot of other brands simply can't meet. The Tudor style, I think, is a little bit ironically named because I don't really find them to be particularly stylish, and that's not really what they're trying to do. Tudor is trying to go with a classic dress watch in terms of design, and it works in that regard. It has no frills. It essentially has Tudor. It has that kind of historic little label there where it says rotor self-winding because it's an automatic. Other than that, you have Dauphine hands, simple dials. In fact, personally, one thing I learned about myself after wearing these watches for a while is I don't really like dress watches. I mean, I think I like some of them, but for the most part, I don't wear dress watches. And even when I wear a suit or something more formal, I prefer to wear, I guess you could say, a more refined sport watch. Like I'll wear like a Submariner or like a Speedmaster or something like that with a suit most of the time above a dress watch. And that's just a personal matter of taste. A lot of people like dress watches a lot, and there's nothing at all wrong with you if you do. It's just something I learned about myself. So even though these watches aren't bad for what they are, they kind of bore me. It's not Tudor's fault. It's just the fact that I'm not particularly interested in your kind of basic three-hand dress watches. And there's a lot of really beautiful dress watches out there, and they tend to be a lot more expensive. So I think at prices like this, you're not able to get some of those more interesting types of features. So there's the 41 millimeter wide version on the wrist. You can see that Tudor has kind of swapped out the straps. So normally this would be on the outside, and they have it on the inside here. The deploying buckles are great. I mean, I think everyone who's purchased a Tudor watch over the last couple of years can attest to the fact there's still some protective plastic right there. That their clasps are just fantastic. The quality is good. You can see this is a nice machined part, polished. The pieces fit together really, really nicely. It's just a great quality deploy. In fact, I like the underside of the watch more than the dial side of the watch. One of the issues with a lot of dress watches is legibility. And as you can see, you have silver on silver hands here, and there's no AR coating on the top of the sapphire crystal. There might be some on the bottom, but there's a lot of reflectivity here, like a lot of reflectivity, and so much reflectivity, as you can see, that I find it distracting and difficult to read the time. So especially on the black dial here, you'd think it'd be better on the black dial because at least there'd be more contrast. You have a glossy dial, but you also have polished hour markers and hands. And as you can see, it just sort of blends together. So in certain lights, you can see it just fine, but in direct light, you're not really gonna be able to read the time that easily. Whereas on this one, because there's a sunburst polishing on the face, legibility is actually gonna be a little bit better, even though it's not particularly great. I find the placement of the date window to be fine. I mean, but I don't necessarily think that a watch like this needs to have a date. I understand that when it comes to matching the dial, it would have been difficult to have a date window with this kind of glossy black finish, or a date disc that had this sort of this sort of silvery color, but it just sort of sticks out a lot when you have what's attempting to be an elegant dial with these just date windows that just sort of like stick out like that. And you know, you look at like a Rolex Cellini, for example, there is a version with the date and it has a little dial as opposed to a window on the face of the watch, which I think is a lot more attractive. So if you're interested in a dress watch by Rolex or the Rolex group, I think the Cellini, or the new Cellini, is probably their strongest offering. But again, Rolex does not offer the Cellini in anything but gold, so you're talking about a completely different price point here. So if you're wanting to spend that kind of $2,000 to $3,000 range, you're not going to be able to get any Rolex essentially. So on the plus side, the quality of these watches is good. The straps is nice. Like I said, the deployant clasp is great. The case works really nicely, but I don't think the dials are as strong as they could be. I think that with some tweaks, they could have been better. So for example, on this dial, if you would have taken away the date, if you would have finished the hands rather than polished, but to be like satinized or something like that, I think you would have had a much stronger look. And you see that there's a lot of reflectivity there, which combined with the fact that a lot of the elements on the dial blend together, make it hard to read the time. Both of these watches contain Swiss ETA 2824 automatic movements. That's a fine workhorse movement. You know, nothing to get super excited about, but definitely nothing to complain about. On the bracelets, I happen to like these watches a lot better. It's possible that on these simple leather straps, that just kind of, you know, adds even less excitement, and I happen to think that dress watches on bracelets are just a little bit better than most dress watches on straps. Of course, it can vary, but that's just a personal opinion. So if you really like the Tudor brand, or you feel sort of a connectivity to the sort of Rolex group and are looking for a dress style watch, this is okay. There's not too many other options at this price range with this level of, I would say, pedigree, but I guess my own personal bias is coming out that I'm not really into dress watches. I think they're a little old school and boring and not that exciting. And, you know, we no longer wear watches just to tell the time. And something like this really feels like it's just there to tell the time and not really do that much else. And so I feel like watches like this, to a degree, at least in my own life, in my own lifestyle, is kind of outdated. I'm a big fan of Tudor, and they make some great stuff, and looking at these things allows me to realize just how much I appreciate something like the Tudor Pelagos or the Tudor Ranger, which are just fantastic watches, and items that I would choose sort of any day of the week over these, even though that they're both, you know, $1,000 to $2,000 more. So again, this is the Tudor style. You have the 41mm wide version as well as the 38mm wide version. Prices start at about $2,000 and go up to $3,500 depending on the style. And you can see the full review on aBlogtoWatch soon. Thanks.